According to his officials, Russia's recently elected president is a man of modest means, with a small six-figure salary, a couple of properties and some cars to his name. His critics say Vladimir Putin is one of the world's wealthiest individuals, who has amassed a secret multi-billion-dollar fortune along with his oligarch associates. So who's right? Sarah Spiller has been trying to find out.
Vladimir Putin, newly elected president of Russia after 12 years in power, now set for 6 more. At a government victory rally in Moscow, his supporters are out in force. To them, he's a hero, the strong man who brought order after the chaos of the Yeltsin years. The carefully cultivated image, the macho horse-riding action man, and judo black belt. These things, they say, signs of his real character. Putin's a leader who's put their country back in her rightful place on the world stage. Election night, and police and troops pour onto the streets of the capital. But in the run-up to the poll, tens of thousands have braved the state security apparatus to protest against Putin's long dominance of Russian politics.
Власть должна быть сменяема. Это элементарно. А не должна быть наследуема.
Мы протестуем против Путина и его комарили.
Россия без Путина! Россия без Путина!
For these Russians, Putin stands for everything that's wrong with their country. They claim that far from restoring Russia's place in the world, his years in control have seen its reputation become synonymous with cronyism and corruption. And that with Putin at the helm, inner cliques have been running Russia largely for their own benefit.
Putin won! Putin won! Кремль жулики считают, что нам надоест выходить на улицы. Нам надоест? Да или нет?
Abuse from domestic opponents may not matter much to Russia's new premier. But it does reflect rumours about Vladimir Putin's personal finances and business dealings, stories that have been circulating internationally for some time. We wanted to find out more. Our investigation would take us from Moscow to St. Petersburg and onto a mysterious palace on the shores of the Black Sea. And along the way, speculation about a hidden fortune.
My personal suspicion is that certainly Mr. Putin is the richest man in Europe, possibly on the planet.
Somewhat different from official information the Kremlin provided last year about Vladimir Putin's wealth as he stood for the presidential elections. When he was Prime Minister Putin, his annual salary was $140,000 a year, assets, 2 apartments, 3 cars, a trailer, a share in a garage and some land. Rather modest for one of the world's most powerful men. But even a cursory look at the Russian leader's lifestyle does reveal some rather expensive tastes. Take Mr. Putin's fascination with top-of-the-range timepieces. A $70,000 platinum Patek Philippe. A Breguet at almost $15,000. He's also been seen wearing the German brand Erlanger & Son, cost in the region of $20,000. And luxury Swiss brand IWC. All in all, Russia's leader has been photographed wearing over $160,000 worth of wristwatch. So how can his watches be worth more than his annual salary?
It's a kind of brazen display of wealth and almost arrogance that he'd be wearing these watches and people can see that clearly it's an indication that he has some kind of hidden wealth.
We asked the Kremlin about the watches. Were they his personal property or owned by the state? They declined to tell us. But what we do know is that Mr. Putin's official position entitles him to a range of impressive benefits, like the use of this spectacular yacht, These pictures were taken before she was reportedly brought by the Office of Presidential Affairs for over $40 million. At 50 metres long, she has a saloon with panoramic sea view, guest cabins, jacuzzi and barbecue. Upkeep, an estimated $4 million a year. On top of this, there's also access to presidential palaces and residences, one of the official, if sumptuous, perks of the job.
It indicates his aspirations to live a luxury lifestyle and also almost live like an oligarch.
But President Putin's critics care less about the trappings of office than the wealth they say you can't see. Wealth that, if rumours are to be believed, comes from less than salubrious sources. In 2010, 250,000 secret memos written by American diplomats from around the world were published on the internet. They'd been leaked to the WikiLeaks website, and they contained some surprising assertions. In one cable, a US diplomat based in Madrid reports a briefing from a Spanish National Court prosecutor who'd investigated Russian mafia cases. According to the prosecutor, under Vladimir Putin, Russia is a virtual mafia state, where one cannot differentiate between the activities of the government and organised crime groups. And there were startling references to allegations about Vladimir Putin's personal wealth. The former US Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice, quoted a Russian opposition figure as saying that Vladimir Putin is nervously trying to secure his immunity from potential law enforcement investigations into his alleged illicit proceeds.
There were numerous allusions to this, to Mr. Putin's alleged secret assets abroad. But there wasn't a kind of smoking gun. There was no kind of, this is his bank account in Switzerland kind of thing. But bear in mind that the WikiLeaks cables dealt with sort of 5 categories of secrecy. Up to secret was the highest sort of classification, but we never saw top secret. I would have liked to have seen top secret.
Rumours, diplomatic chatter. But what of the substance of all this? We wanted to explore the origins of stories about Vladimir Putin. We travelled to St. Petersburg. Vladimir Putin came here in 1990, after 15 years as an officer in the KGB. He quickly rose to become the city's deputy mayor. And even during these early days, he was beginning to attract attention. To find out why, we drove out of the city, deep into the countryside, to meet a woman called Marina Salier. A friend of famous Soviet dissident Andrei Sakharov, in 1992, Salier headed a city council investigation into a deal Putin oversaw while he was an official in the mayor's office. The deal involved the export of $100 million worth of raw materials in exchange for food for the city. But the food never materialized, and Marina Salier and the council wanted to know why. She kept her documents from the time.
Что материалы ушли за границу, а продукты взамен не были получены. Вот тут 100% доказана вина Путина. 100%. И город в 92 году, когда продуктов не было вообще, остался без всего. Вот это доказано 100%. Вот.
Although her investigation turned up no evidence that Putin had personally benefited from the deal, Salier says his signature was on papers granting export permits to the companies involved.
What does this document show?
Мы выяснили, кроме того, что Путин, его комитет, заключает контракты бартерные на поставку в город продовольствия. Он выдавал лицензии и материалы, лес, металл, хлопок, мазут, там, нефть, уходили за границу. Уходили за границу.
Mr. Putin has denied he ever signed these documents, and now the real story may never be known. Marina Salier died a week after this interview. Back in St. Petersburg, we heard more claims. Lieutenant Colonel Andrei Zykov is a former senior investigator at the Russian Interior Ministry. In June 1999, when Putin was serving his first term as president, Zykov was put in charge of criminal case number 144128. The case involved a construction company called 20th Trust, which officials suspected had been used to siphon money from St. Petersburg's city budget in the early 1990s.
Весь вопрос стоял, почему корпорации не должны давать вновь никаких бюджетных средств, если она не расплатилась с долгами. А ей давали. Ответ: она давала взятки чиновникам из мэрии Санкт-Петербурга.
What was the connection to Vladimir Putin in all this?
Значит, мы как раз исследовали и пришли к выводу, что корпорация «20-й трест» построила для Путина, Владимира Владимировича, построила дом на озере Комсомольском и, в общем-то, построила для него коттедж в Испании, Торревьеха.
In 2000, Russia's Prosecutor General shut the investigation down on the grounds of insufficient proof. Zykov says he was fired a year and a half later. We asked the Kremlin to respond to Mr. Zykov's claims. It's declined to do so. From St. Petersburg to Moscow, the same journey Vladimir Putin made back in the 90s, to become Prime Minister, then President. For some Muscovites, the Putin years have brought affluence and a taste of the good life. But it's here that we heard the most serious allegations against Russia's president-elect. Stanislav Belkovsky is a Russian political insider and founder of the National Strategy Institute, a Moscow-based think tank. His widely publicized and astonishing claim is that the Russian premier is almost unimaginably wealthy, a billionaire several times over.
The figure of $40 billion emerged in 2007. By now, this figure could have changed, I believe, at the level of $60–70 billion.
If true, such gigantic sums would easily make Vladimir Putin the richest man in Europe. Belkovsky claims the money comes from shares that Vladimir Putin secretly owns in 3 giant oil and gas companies. 4.5% of the national giant Gazprom, 37% of oil supplier Surgut Neftegaz, and up to 75% of overseas oil trader Gunvor. Belkovsky is reluctant to explain exactly how he knows this, saying only that the information comes from confidential sources inside the presidential administration. But he's more forthcoming about why he claims Vladimir Putin would need such a vast sum.
I think Vladimir Putin and his inner circles do firmly believe that money decides everything in the world, and without controlling such amounts of money, you can never protect yourself, both physically and politically. Money is the god of Russian elite.
The 3 companies identified by Belkovsky refute his claims. Surgut Neftegaz, Gazprom and Gunvor have all strongly denied any links to Vladimir Putin, or that he benefits or owns any shares in their businesses. And the man himself has been equally forthright. In 2008, when he was asked about allegations that he may be the richest man in Europe, he said it was just rubbish, picked out of someone's nose and smeared on bits of paper. The claims are nonsense, rubbish. But the stories about links between Vladimir Putin and the Gunvor oil trading company were loud enough to reach the ears of John Burl, US ambassador to Moscow. In the secret diplomatic cables published on WikiLeaks, he is quoted as saying, "It's secretive ownership, rumoured to include Prime Minister Putin." Luke Harding was Moscow correspondent for the UK Guardian newspaper until he was expelled in 2011 after reporting on the WikiLeaks cables.
Nobody knows how much money Vladimir Putin is worth. It's kind of hard to calculate. I mean, if you go to Switzerland and say, look, I'm an investigative journalist, do you have an account in the name of Mr. VV Putin? They'll go, I'm terribly sorry, we have no account of that name.
Harding investigated Gunvor, the oil trading company in which Putin is alleged to hold a 75% stake. Like us, he was unable to find any hard evidence to back Belkovsky's claims, but he says its rise to prominence is surprising.
Gunvor has gone from being a relatively small oil trader to the company that exports a third of Russia's seaborne oil not from Russia, but from Zug, a sleepy little Swiss village with green pasture, cows, and so on. And to me, that seems very strange.
Amid all these claims and counterclaims, there is one undeniable fact about Vladimir Putin. While he's been in power, both as Prime Minister and President, a small circle of associates have become very wealthy indeed. We've been told that the origins of this group go back to St. Petersburg and a gated community of dachas, or country homes, outside the city. We went to take a look. Vladimir Putin sold his dacha on the shores of Lake Komsomolskoye a number of years ago. But in the mid-1990s, he and others formed a cooperative to buy property in the area. OK, I think this is just about as far as we're going to be able to come. You can see there's a security barrier here, and there's some guard dogs who've been howling away at us, and there's a guy up there who's keeping an eye on us. But this was the dacha compound where Vladimir Putin formed some of his closest associations. It was a tight-knit group, and they lived along the lakeside. And some of those men have now become dollar billionaires, some of the richest and most powerful men in Russia. They include Yuri Kovalchuk, a former deputy director of a regional scientific institute, now a shareholder in the powerful Rossiya Bank. According to the authoritative Forbes list, he's worth $1.2 billion. Another is Nikolai Shamalov, also a major shareholder in Rossiya Bank, his fortune listed by Forbes at $500 million. Other associations with now wealthy businessmen may have been formed here at the Yawara Niva Judo Club in St. Petersburg, which Putin reportedly co-founded and where youngsters now practice their moves. CEO of the club is Arkady Rotenberg, and he and his brother Boris were said to be Putin's sparring partners back in their youth. The brothers now control much of Russia's oil and gas pipe building industry. Together they're said to be worth just over $1.5 billion. Another co-founder of the St. Petersburg Judo Club, a man called Gennady Timchenko. In the late 80s, he worked in a local oil refinery. Now he's co-owner of Gunvor, Russia's biggest foreign trader, according to Forbes, worth $9.1 billion. We approached all these men for a response. Only Mr. Timchenko's lawyers replied. They told us, any suggestion that our client is a close friend of Mr. Putin is false. Mr. Timchenko had already established himself as a successful businessman well before Mr. Putin rose to office. His success is as a result of many years of extremely hard work. Nevertheless, if you add up the personal fortunes of Mr. Putin's acquaintances from the lakeside properties and from the judo club, as well as some of Mr. Putin's relatives and former KGB associates, they have an estimated worth of over $180 billion. Journalist Luke Harding has a view on their staggering success.
The connections that Vladimir Putin formed early on are tremendously important, and those people have risen with him. And really what we've seen since he came into power in 2000 is we've seen kind of Kremlin Inc. We've seen a group of his chums many with KGB backgrounds, who've kind of taken over state corporations.
As we continued our journey around Russia, one story kept attracting our attention. It concerned a lavish Italian-style property being built on the Black Sea coast. A palace, so the rumours went, fit for a tsar. These photographs were taken secretly by construction workers. They show richly decorated interiors, ornate grounds, gates topped by a two-headed eagle, a lift down to the beach. But who is this mysterious palace for, and who's paying for it? In the early 1990s, Sergei Kolesnikov was boss of a Russian medical supply company. In 2000, the firm became involved in a scheme to raise money from prominent businessmen to buy equipment for clinics in St. Petersburg. One of his partners in the project was Nikolai Shamalov, an old acquaintance of Putin's from the dacha compound days. Millions of dollars of equipment were indeed purchased through the scheme, but according to Kolesnikov, now turned whistleblower and living in exile, millions more dollars were diverted into a private investment company set up at Mr. Shamalov's behest. Its ownership, he claims, was hidden by anonymous bearer shares, the vast bulk of which were held by Mr. Shamalov on Vladimir Putin's behalf. The money, Kolesnikov believes, has gone towards the costs of the mysterious Black Sea Palace.
Да, мы не думали, что в конечном итоге все эти деньги будут потрачены на строительство дворца. По той причине, что начиналось все несколько по-другому. Так же, как и сам проект дворца. Вначале это планировался небольшое здание, в среднем 2000 метров на берегу моря. Вот. Но потом, после 2006 года, изменились планы. И из этого, будем считать, небольшого здания вырос огромный дворцовый комплекс.
Kolesnikov claims that Vladimir Putin was regularly briefed about investments made on his behalf.
Да, я ежегодно, 2-3 раза в год готовил отчет о тех инвестициях, которые сделаны в экономику России, все проекты, которые предполагались к осуществлению, и передавал их Шамалову и Горелову в те моменты, когда они непосредственно ездили к Путину для получения инструкций и так далее. У меня нет оснований не верить им в том, что эти все материалы им докладывались Путину, и полученные инструкции в дальнейшем передавались мне.
Neither Mr. Shamalov nor Mr. Gorelov, the other man mentioned, responded to our request for a comment on these claims. But we've seen documents that appear to link the presidential administration to building contracts for the property. They bear the signature of a man called Vladimir Kozhin, head of the Presidential Administration Property Department. The presidential office has insisted that currently it has no connection to the palace. So, officially at least, this building has nothing to do with the Kremlin or with Mr. Putin. We took a trip to see how close we could get. Curiously, the palace seemed to enjoy an unusual amount of protection. There were guarded outposts, barbed wire, and the approach road to the palace was closed.
Just over there is the road to the palace, and there's heavy security all around. In fact, we've been approached once already and told to move on. There's a barrier, and it's reportedly guarded over by the Federal Protection Service, who look after high-ranking officials. So this is about as far as we can get.
So we went to the nearest village. Had people here seen Mr. Putin visiting this palace? Oh yes, they said. You always know when he's around because there are helicopters overhead and yachts in the harbour. And one man was willing to tell us about Mr. Putin's trips on camera.
And have you seen Mr. Putin visiting here?
Конечно, видел. Почему бы нет? Что здесь такого страшного? Он погулял по городу, прохаживался по набережной. Он такой же человек, как все.
How often does he come?
Ну, вот это я не знаю, как часто. Ну, бывает. Как часто, не могу сказать.
The documents, the security all around this place, the whistleblower Kolesnikov, and the testimony of local people all suggest this property is indeed connected to Vladimir Putin. But the exact status of the palace remains a mystery. As with the other claims we've examined in this film, every question about Mr. Putin's affairs throws up yet more questions. How much all this matters is, of course, first and foremost for the people of this nation to decide. And they've just elected Vladimir Putin for another 6 years. For many, it's enough that their strongman has brought wealth and stability. Others may feel that taking to the streets is the only way of getting the change they seek. For the rest of the world, the questions about Mr. Putin's friends, his business dealings, his personal probity persist. Russia remains a global force, playing a full role in international affairs. Therefore, the way this man, this enigma, wields power in this vast country is of significance to us all.